Good morning. Welcome to the Children's Museum. Not yet. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Good morning. I'm Karen Kelly, Director of Exhibits and Education at the Children's Museum of Atlanta, and welcome to our Town Square series, a virtual series designed for families with young children and to talk about our issues and challenges that we're facing in this time of COVID. Children's museums around the country serve as town squares for families, and we serve that role in our community. We are a gathering place where all are invited to engage, explore, and learn in the way that children learn best, through play. Over the past months, we have had heard from families, educators, and community members about what they need to learn. They want meaningful conversations, resources, and information to help them navigate this very challenging time. We have been so fortunate to engage our best and brightest in these conversations that will hopefully enlighten, educate, and in some cases dispel myths. This month, we have focused on how to parent during a pandemic, and especially how to get the most out of virtual learning for your child. If you've missed any of our past Town Square sessions, please check out our website, childrensmuseumatlanta.org, and look for our blog or go to our YouTube channel. I am very excited this morning to welcome Bridget Ratajczak, who serves as on our Exhibit and Programs Advisory Committee, but in her other life has a very important job at the Department of Early Care and Learning as a Family and Child Development Specialist. She will be sharing ideas on how to navigate early learning in this time of COVID. And our conversation this morning will explore many topics, including children's developmental levels, the social and emotional needs of children and families, and the need to give everyone grace, especially in this challenging time. Ms. Ratajczak I am having a disconnect this morning, so if you all will bear with me. Ms. Ratajczak provides support for families across the state of Georgia on the topics of developmental monitoring, child development, and family engagement. She has a master's degree in early childhood education, special education from the University of Georgia, and extensive experience in early childhood education and special education, including her work as an instructor at the University of Georgia's Birth Through Kindergarten Teacher Preparation Program, as an early intervention specialist with the Babies Can't Wait program, and as a preschool special education teacher. Bridget, welcome this morning, and I would really love to start by having you talk a little bit about why you thought it was so important to be a part of this conversation today.
Hi there, good morning, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I think that it was important to me to be a part of this conversation because I think families are struggling. Families are really trying to figure out how to do what's best for their child and also for themselves. And I wanted to be able to share whatever information I could to be able to support them and to be able to help. I really value the Children's Museum, and I've learned a whole lot about you all and what you do since I've been part of the committee. And I feel like you do a lot to support families, both who come to the museum, but also out in the community. And I really appreciate that work and wanted to do what I could to support it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So one of the things we are consistently hearing from the parents is that they're navigating this very new world of education for their young children, and are also now, some of them, they're teachers. Not only were they already their primary teachers, but now they're their teachers at home, and they want to understand how to give their kids the best experience. Can you help our parents who are listening and educators understand the developmental stages of young children? We are talking now for 0 to pre-K, and what it means in supporting them in this time of virtual learning.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to share some information about that. So I think the one thing to remember is that young children are active and engaged learners. So participating in any kind of virtual learning is a challenge because young children learn by doing, by experimenting, by exploring. Everything from the toddler or infant who's knocking their cup off of the high chair tray and then watching someone pick it up and experimenting with that cause and effect, to a preschooler who is observing the bugs walking on the sidewalk outside. Those are all learning experiences. So I think one thing for families to understand is that Learning for young children doesn't just happen in a classroom setting, it's happening all the time. And they're going to learn no matter what we do, because that's just how their brains are. And so providing them with opportunities to explore and to try new things and to just play is, I think, the most important thing. When it comes to virtual learning and doing things online, I think providing things that are age appropriate, and also what the American Academy of Pediatrics says is that providing an adult to support them, having conversations about what they're watching, about what they're seeing, and what they're doing when they're playing games online and things like that are really important, because I kind of like to think about it as the difference between us binging on Netflix shows versus participating in a Zoom meeting.
Mhm.
You know, there's that watching a TV show, Peppa Pig, or, you know, whatever their favorite show is, passively, versus having a conversation about what the characters on the TV show or the game or whatever it is are doing, or even the teacher that's reading a story, having that conversation about what they're doing, which helps that child's brain stay engaged and active with what they're seeing online.
So, so that's important. And we talked about children's play and learning. So one of the resources we provide at the museum is kind of a guidebook on, if you have a 1-year-old, these are some of the things that work for them. And the development stages look very different. So one of the things I had to learn as a young parent was that repetition, kids repeated activities, not to make their parents crazy, but but because they weren't certain of the outcome, that they learned every time. So it's part of the fact that children are natural scientists. So
exactly, yeah.
If you drop this thing and mom picks it up, does that happen every time?
Right.
Does gravity pull it down every time? So can you talk a little bit about those pieces and stages with the children to help the parents sort of navigate them? Because I think once I understood that, my patience level went up.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. And I think, you know, adults are similar, but children really need that repetition, as you said. And repetition is a critical part of learning. And so, as you said, that story that they want to read the same story over and over again till you and they can have memorized it and can repeat it back to you, that's part of a learning process. It's also a security feeling too, that predictability, that understanding that every time I do this, this happens is really important. That helps a child to feel secure, but also to understand and to learn those patterns. I think with a young child under the age, you know, an infant and young toddler, they're figuring out a lot of those concepts of object permanence. When something gets covered up, it's still there. So that's a lot of that peekaboo, and why those games are so much fun is because they're learning that concept that when something goes away, it's still there. That's also where separation anxiety comes from. That whole idea that if mommy or daddy or that significant adult leaves, they're still going to be able to come back. They still exist. You know, remembering that children, what they see in their little world around them is what they know and what exists. They're very egocentric. That idea that their center, they are the center of their universe, and that's very developmentally appropriate. They come back to that when they become teenagers, which is what we have going on in our world right now, in my house. But so as they get older, though, when they get to be in about 2 or 3, they start understanding a little bit more of the world outside of them, and they start wanting to experiment with pretend play. And different objects can become different things. That's, you know, the baby picking up the remote and pretending it's a telephone and those types of things. But also they want to copy what adults in their life are doing. And so the baby feeding the baby doll, the trying to change their diaper or dress them, those types of things. But also wanting to help with preparing food and pretending they're going to the market and different things like that. That's what they see in their life, and that's what they're going to want to imitate. And that's kind of where they are at that stage. And then when they get older, to the 3 and 4 year old age, they're moving more into being able to create their own scenarios and play games with other people and understand rules somewhat, although they still try to fudge on the rules or make up their own rules. That's part of it. But their play expands, their interaction with others expands. And I think that that's probably something that a lot of adults are struggling with right now, is that their children aren't having those experiences with other children on a regular basis that they often would. And how do they facilitate that? And that's hard. But being willing as an adult to get down on the floor and play with your child as a peer, kind of, sometimes letting the child direct that play, I think can be a really important piece of that, and not always having to be the one saying, no, these are the rules and this is what we're going to do, but letting the child have some of that can be really important. And when your child is younger, when they're saying things, imitating them and not just having them imitate you is also really empowering and can be a very helpful way to kind of give them some of that control in their lives too.
Great. So I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the need for security. So, and I do think for this time of COVID, where everything is so different, I wanted to ask you about how can, given you want to be flexible and interact with your child as they need it, how do you also, what do you recommend for bringing structure to the day? What will help the kids and parents for early childhood in doing that? And what would a healthy day look like for virtual learning for a child or a toddler?
I think that's an excellent question. I think having some stability as far as schedule, having regular wake times, regular nap times, regular going to bed times, having routines around those, as far as what we do to prepare for nap time, what we do to prepare for bedtime, having some structure to the day as far as activities, making sure that you've got a mixture of active time and quiet time. If you need to get on a meeting and you need your child quiet, then see what you can do to schedule some outside time or some running around the house playing chase time or something like that. And then a little bit of time to quiet down, and then get them engaged in something that's quiet while you're doing your meeting. You know, those types of things. So having some set routines in the day, but also thinking about activity levels and what are you needing, when are you needing them to be quiet, and when can you work to let them get their wiggles out beforehand. And you know, any classroom teacher is going to tell you they have to have time to get their wiggles out. We can't just expect a young child of any age to just sit for hours on end. We can't expect our adults to do that. You know, we have to get up and go get our wiggles out between our Zoom meetings, you know? So, you know, a really young toddler under the age of 18 months, you're going to be able to expect less than 5 to 10 minutes at a time between needing to change activities. An older toddler, 10 to 15 minutes. Preschooler, probably about 20. A pre-K child, 30 minutes max. So kind of be aware of that they're going to need to change. And that doesn't mean it has to be a whole different thing, but maybe, you know, you have 10 toys that are out and available, and they can change between the toys. We have a really nice video that we put together at DECAL in our Chat About Children series that talks about how to help do schedules with young children. And then there's another one about how to do a play plan. So with an older child, 3 to 5 year old, you can actually kind of help them come up with a plan of what they'll play with during your meeting time or during your time when you need them to be quiet, so that they can actually have an idea, because that I don't know what to do, I'm bored, I can't figure it out kind of thing is real for children. And having them come up with a plan and helping them develop that plan before you have to be on your meeting or need to be doing something where you need to not be disturbed can be really helpful for them.
Okay. So one of the things, though, I think we do have this tendency to overprogram our children. How do you feel about letting kids be bored in this age range?
I think that is important. letting children be bored, but less than letting children be bored, letting children have opportunities to explore and find things, providing them with the materials. It's a lot of what you all do at the museum, where you provide them with the materials and then just let them play and figure it out themselves. When I was teaching at EGA, one of my kind of catchphrases was always, it's more about the process than the product. Letting children have access to art materials, blocks, open-ended types of materials that are going to allow them to explore and use their imagination, but not be tied to this is the way you have to do it types of things. And so I think, yes, letting them get bored, but that's not necessarily when you have a meeting and you need to be occupied otherwise,
Correct. Yeah.
But my youngest daughter really kind of, there's something she said to me the first week of kindergarten that has actually kind of driven me in a lot of ways to make sure that we have developmentally appropriate practices, is that she came home from her first week of kindergarten and I said, how was it? And she said, all we do is work, work, work. It's such a long day.
It's so sad.
With the drama that only a kindergartner can provide there. But that spoke to me because this was a kid who would spend hours in her play area just playing and having pretend play and just engaging. And she was talking and she was doing all these things. And when they're in a school setting, when they're in class, they don't really get a lot of that when they get to kindergarten. So I think allowing them in pre-K and earlier to have as much of that as possible is really important. And also when they're done with school time, letting them have as much of that as possible.
Right.
And really as parents, most of what we need to do is provide them with materials. And it doesn't have to be fancy stuff. I mean, all three of my kids played with a Fisher Price kitchen that we got at a yard sale, that was already 10 years old when they got it. They had little plastic plates that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. It doesn't have to be fancy stuff. Boxes, empty shopping, empty cereal boxes, empty containers, and all that kind of stuff can be just as exciting for them as the fancy kits and stuff that have bells and whistles that you buy elsewhere. So letting them use their imagination, helping them to be able to grow their imagination, I think is a really important thing. And as they get older, they're going to do more and more of that if we let them do that.
Right. I love what you had to say about boxes. A few years ago at the museum, we had an exhibit that was nothing but these amazing cardboard boxes, and the kids loved it. Yeah. They played, the parents got into it. It was very fun to watch the parents creating these enormous box structures. So I love that. It does not have to be expensive. It does not have to cost a lot of money.
It doesn't, no.
So great, the freedom of it. What about the importance of outdoor time?
It's critical right now. And so allowing kids to get out, to get fresh air, to move. I was just remembering when I had one of my kids at a well check with the doctor, him saying to us, he liked to see certain number of bruises and scratches on kids' legs because it meant that they were outside moving and running and things like that. Because they need that. They need to be able to take some risks and learn what their bodies can do. They need to be able to feel different textures that we don't have in our homes, the textures outside as far as the grass and the mud and the dirt and things like that, the concrete. They need to be able to just be outside and get that fresh air, get that vitamin D from the sun, and all that is so important to them. So making sure that they have that in a safe place is really important. And I know that for some families, having a safe place to do that is really hard. So seeing what they can do to find that is I think, an important part of developing children. But also right now, when we're having to spend a lot of time indoors and we're spending more time on screens than we typically would, I think it's important for all of us.
Yep, nope, I totally agree. So we've had some of the conversations earlier, and one of the terms I heard you was the use of the word grace in relation to this whole year. Can you kind of unpack that a little and talk about it with the families and parents?
Yeah, I think, that's kind of my code word for the year, is that we need to give ourselves grace. We need to give our children grace. We need to give each other grace. And what I mean by that is just giving ourselves a break, giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt, and being really compassionate about the fact that what we're going through is hard, and that our lives kind of went topsy-turvy in March and took a right turn. And there's a lot of anxiety about what's going on. There's a lot of concern about others and about what others are doing and how that impacts us in a whole lot of different ways, as far as health, civic kind of things. There's just a whole lot of things going on. But to also remember that we are our children's world and that we create a safe space for them by how we respond to things. And that right now is a really excellent teaching moment for young children about how to cope with differences, how to cope with change, and how to deal with stress. And by talking through what we're feeling and how we're feeling about things with our young children and letting them talk to us about how they're feeling, then that's a really important lesson that we can teach them right now, is that that yes, things have changed. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it feels yucky. We miss our friends. We miss our routines that we used to have, but we're also doing all these fun things together and doing all these different things, and that's okay too, you know? So I think just being kind. Another thing is to know that when our children are participating in online learning, virtual school for preschool or pre-K, that we may see them responding in ways that they would typically do at school, but that we're not used to. So, you know, when our kid gets upset because they raised their hand to be called on and they didn't get called on, that's okay. That doesn't mean that your kid is a selfish little person. That's part of learning school. And that's what that would be happening if they were in the classroom, right? But it's happening from home and you're seeing it. And that's okay. And it's okay to talk with them about it, because their teacher would probably talk with them about it at school. Yeah, it's sad that you didn't get called on today, but you know, tomorrow you'll probably get a chance to be called on, you know, that type of thing. So our kids are learning to do school. They're learning to do it a little differently through a screen and all. And the other piece is to be gracious to teachers. They've got a lot on their plates. They've had to learn how to teach in a classroom setting with a screen instead of with all their little people, which is what gives them joy and fills their bucket up, is to see those beautiful faces and hear those voices and hear all those quirky little comments that they make and things like that. So if your child is participating virtually in school, communicate with the teacher regularly about what's going on, about what's working and what's not working, but do so in a way that's respectful and gracious, understanding that what they've got going on is hard and all.
It's all a challenge. Yeah. It's teachers didn't do this so they could be on a computer watching their kids from a entirely different city even.
No.
So thank you for mentioning that, because that's sort of one of our themes here, is supporting our teachers in this very challenging time. And then I guess one of our last questions, but you may have mostly addressed this, is what do you think are the top challenges for parents right now?
I think finding balance, supporting their children. But I think, again, give themselves grace and let them know that, your children are going to learn no matter what. That yes, teachers have gone to school and know how to do specific things to help your children learn, but including your children in daily routines, talking to them about what's going on, about what they see, helping them explore, giving them opportunities to explore, that's really going to be the biggest learning opportunity. And also to know that there are very few windows of development that are going to just slam shut during this time period, and that being able to that give yourself a break there, because I think that a lot of parents are like, a friend of mine was like, her kindergartner, what if I don't teach him how to read right? It's like, you know what? It's okay. He's going to learn how to read. It's going to be okay. You're providing him with a good environment, a literacy-rich environment, and that's what he needs right now, and a language-rich environment. And that's really what our kids need right now. And that it's going to be okay.
Great.
So,
This is all wonderful. So I'm aware what time it is. You have brought some wonderful resources that we'd like to share. And one of them I just want to kind of call out is a new developmental tool for parents who are a little concerned, maybe if their child is developing inappropriately. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
I'd love to. Yeah. So at DECAL, we have put together some resources for families that they can use in their homes to provide different resources. I already mentioned our Chat About Children, which is a series of 6 different videos that we put together. There's also our Toddler Time at Home and our Georgia's Pre-K at Home. And those are actually a week's worth of activities broken down into different areas that families can do with their children at home. The next one is just if families are interested, needing help finding childcare, we have our qualityrated.org is our website, and or 877 All Georgia Kids is another resource to help families find childcare.
I believe there's a scholarship available for families as well if they need financial help with childcare, the SOLVE program. So I just want to call that out.
Correct. That's for families whose children are in K through 12 and doing full-time virtual learning. Their district is doing full-time virtual learning. They can get a scholarship for that. The other resources, just some really good quality educational resources. SesameStreet.org has done an amazing job. They are always had amazing programming, but they have some really good activities, but also some really good resources for families. And then PBSKids.org has amazing TV programming, but also some really good resources. And then, as you mentioned, our new developmental milestones website that we just launched, development.decal.ga.gov, and you can go on there. These are milestones that were developed by the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics. You can go on there and you can look at what are the milestones for your child. And then we have a resources page that talks about what to do if you have concerns about your child's development. Some other resources, challengingbehavior.org if you're looking for ways to support your child's social emotional development, and strongforlife.com has also, through Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, has some really great information for families about nutrition development, but they're also working on resilience and some social emotional programming too.
Great. Do we have any questions from the audience, Stacy, or no? Maybe not. So I'm trying to think of any other questions I have. Is there anything that you didn't say that you wanted to today?
I don't think so. I think, I guess another thing that's a challenge for families that there are a whole lot of resources out there, yes, and it can get very overwhelming to know what's helpful and to even to know where to go.
Right.
So if they have questions and concerns and they want to reach out, they can email me at childdevelopment@decal.ga.gov, and I'm happy to help them get the resources in the right place, figure out where they can find different resources. I know that Children's Museum, you all have done some really great programming for families and for teachers online, and also in the museum yourselves. And so I think that that's an amazing resource. Honestly, I wish I knew more about it when my kids were little. I think I shared the anecdote that my son spent hours on the ball machine, and he's now studying engineering at UGA. So.
It's all about the Children's Museum. We totally
exactly. That's totally what did that for him. but
set him on the right path.
Exactly. But it's just neat. I love that how you all have so many different things for different levels of interest, because you know, my daughter spent most of her time over in the pretend play area in the kitchen, you know, in the Waffle House, or, you know, I'm not sure that that's what it was at the time, but, you know, in that type of area, whereas he was on that ball machine the entire time.
And thank you for bringing that, because the museum is open now. I know a lot of folks don't know that, but we are open for visitors. So please come on down. And thank you for that. And I believe our time is up. I cannot thank you enough so much.
It's been so much fun.
It's been so much fun. I love talking to you. And we'll have the resources that Bridget has provided and the recorded video up on our museum's blog page, and it will also be on our YouTube channel. And keep an eye out. We'll be talking about we'll have our next series of town squares beginning October 8th. We're going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion around LGBTQIA children and families.
Wonderful.
So we're very excited about that series. So thank you so much. And everybody, I hope you have a great day.
you.
And Bridget, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.